We'll wait for a minute or two. The Venerable just step out. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Venerable.
Thanks.
Today is the first Tuesday of April, so we're switching to English. And actually, today we have a very interesting topic. The name of the talk today is called Trauma of Everyday Life. So this is kind of consistent with a lot of discussions that Venerable D and I have been having, which is we kind of have to do the two things at once. One is that we want to, when the opportunity arises, we want to really talk about Buddha's teaching, particularly the basic teaching. And then, but at the same time, we need to make adjustment to the world and face some of the difficulties that we have, particularly nowadays with the war going on, with a lot of stuff going on in the world. It causes a lot of anxiety, a lot of anger, and a lot of trauma. So we need to kind of address that too. So it's in that spirit that we're trying to find a balance. I believe that Venerable D want to focus on this particular topic. So with that, I'm going to give the podium to Venerable D and let him take over. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, or good morning, wherever you are. Let me bring up my PowerPoint. So I decided to use this book. The title is The Trauma of Everyday Life by Dr. Mark Epstein. And it's an excellent read for folks suffering from trauma. And he shares how he counsels his clients in his practice, and is really, mainly based on the Buddha's teaching and mindfulness meditation. So from now on, I will bring out what I think is important and the case and the vignettes that he uses in his book, and also the folks that I worked with inside the prisons, just so that you guys out there can relate to it if you experience something similar, except that you didn't get into the prisons. I just heard a story today that was horrible as well. This one person, he's inside prison, incarcerated for 18 years, and he committed his crime when he was 18. And so he is now 36, but I will save that for future talks. But I like to begin with an article by Diana Partington. The title of this article is The Buddha, the World's First Psychologist. This is going to help us, and support us in terms of our discussion, in terms of applying the Buddha's teaching to manage and overcome our suffering, our issues, okay? So basically, she said Buddhist psychology teaches that the habitual patterns of the mind are the root cause of suffering. You know, we attach to pleasure, we reject pain, and that is in italic that I add is the second noble truth, and that's the cost of our suffering. I mean, it applies to everyone. And because we are not able to stay in the present moment to deal with the issue, and because our mind is either constantly thinking about the past or thinking about the future. And she continues with saying that behavioral psychology begun exploring how thoughts influence emotions and behaviors. But psychology took this a step further by addressing the very nature of the thought itself, basically our mind. And Buddhist psychology teaches us to understand the nature of the mind itself. It shows us that our suffering does not come from external circumstances alone, but from how we react to them, which is really true. So by practicing and cultivating mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, we can begin to change our relationship with our suffering. And ultimately, we can find peace. So the legacy of Buddhist psychology is that it offers us a path to mental well-being and a more profound, compassionate way of living, reducing our suffering and creating meaning in this life, in our very, very life at the moment. So, in future talks, I will share more stories. I won't share my opinion because that's not appropriate, but I will share with you guys what I witnessed and how I work with people who suffer from trauma, be it inside the prison or outside of the prison. But my main focus is gonna be people inside the prison because they are the ones that needed help most and they got no help. Okay, and this is the cover for this book. So Dr. Mark Epstein is a psychiatrist in New York City. He authored a lot of books and he got his undergrad and medical degrees from Harvard. He has been practicing Vipassana, basically mindfulness meditation, since 1974, 52 years. So this is my suggestion for you guys out there. So as we continue to cover the topics in this book, then think about how therapy can be applied to yourself or how Dr. Epstein's sessions, his insights, how they can be applied to your case. Um, and and from that, what you want to do is take time to reflect on your daily experiences. A lot of your experiences could be trauma. It may be happening more. It may be um, common, but it's not okay. It's not normal. That's the key to know. I keep telling people inside the prison, let's say if they were beat up by their parents or if they were neglected, it was common or it still is common, but it's not okay. That's the key to remember. So when you're able to reflect on your daily traumatic experiences, you can figure out how to manage and perhaps overcome those traumatic experiences. And don't even think that is normal because thinking normal does not help, and you end up having to endure and suppress all those issues, which in turn will affect either your physical and mental health. And this is what I said earlier, the traumatic experiences on a daily basis, um, they happen commonly, but they're not okay. They're not normal. Okay. So in his first chapter, he titled it "The Way Out Is Through." Basically, we just have to face our trauma directly. And he defined, trauma is an indivisible part of human existence, and it takes many forms and spares no one. I don't know if I have told you guys before from CDC, the Center for Disease Control, reported that 60% of people out here suffer at least one type of childhood trauma. People inside the prison, 90% of people inside the prisons suffer at least four types of childhood trauma. That's the difference. And the thing that the stability and security that we rely on suddenly, disappear. And he cited, three of his clients, all young women, their husband died, and another person who was his age was diagnosed with a threatening illness. And they went to him for therapy, for help, but he said they did not need sympathy from him. They needed something else from him. And here I would like to, I think I have included this slide before, basically the 5 daily recollections. We are getting old day by day. We cannot avoid aging. We are subject to illness and infirmity, cancer, terminal illness. We cannot avoid. Um, we could die, we cannot avoid that. We just don't know when. It could be sudden through accident, or it could be gradual through some kind of illness. And number four is we are separate from our loved ones, and we are trying to hang on to them. They could be moving away, they could leave us, they could pass away, and that happens to everyone. And the one key to remember is that we are the owners of our actions, basically our karma. And so for us, each one of us, when we think, when we speak, and when we act, we want to be cautious and do it with wholesome intention. Then that way we create positive or wholesome karma. So he said, he used this term realistic view, and that is and he cited the fourth noble truth, which is the Eightfold Path, is that realistic view counsel that trauma in any form is not a failure or mistake on our part. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not a reflection of our inner failing. It's just a fact of life. And for every one of us, let's say, even let's say a woman or a young woman at work, she was harassed, sexually harassed or abused, and she might think that it was because it was her fault, and she felt ashamed and wouldn't talk about it and wouldn't seek help. And that is not okay. And so we have to be mindful of our attitude toward trauma, which is the heart of the Buddha's teaching, although it's often overlooked in the rush to embrace our inner peace that his teachings promise. The thing is, we cannot have inner peace when we ignore or neglect our past traumatic experiences. In order for us to make any progress as we used the Buddha's teaching, we need to address and process our past traumatic experiences. And once we get through most of those experiences, then definitely we can find inner peace, we will make progress. So here he said, in Western psychology, um, they understand, it understands the cause of trauma, more passive, but it's not that easy. However, in Eastern practices, basically in the Buddha's teaching, um, he offered Buddhist practices to help our mind settle. Um, but both strategies seek to escape trauma once and for all. you know but the thing is, because trauma is so pervasive, because it stays in our body and mind, right? Just like Dr. Bessel van der Kolk said, the title of his book, The Body Keeps a Score. So here the Buddha's teaching basically said, if one can treat trauma as a fact and not as a failing, then one has a chance to learn from the invisible slings and arrows that come one's way. And with all the traumas, they don't destroy us, and but the, but becomes bearable, even illuminating, when we learn to relate to them differently. And according to Dr. Epstein's experienced, he said, developmental trauma, abbreviated as DT, occurs when emotional pain cannot find a relational home in which it can be held. Here I found a definition from psychologytoday.com. I also cited the article right here. Basically, developmental trauma refers to the impact of chronic, repeated to stressful events, such as abuse, neglect, household instability during the child critical age or stage of development. So what it means is that all the aspects of a child's affected, the attachment, biology, the child, because every child is needs attachment in order for the child to grow up to be a healthy adult. It affects the child's biology, the amygdala, the brain, right? And the emotional regulation. The child does not know how to regulate his or her emotions. And then they become dissociated, meaning that they don't want to deal with their problem. And some of the invisible symptoms are like ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder, and bipolar disorder. So basically, what happened to Epstein was that he was not comfortable with himself. He felt unsure. He has this existential anxiety, which from a couple months ago, when I shared the book, Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl, in logotherapy. That's the thing. He always felt something was wrong with him, inhibited, boring, felt ashamed, and longed to feel at ease. That was his developmental trauma, even though he didn't say anything about his childhood, how he was raised. So, in a sense, when he read the Dharma Pada, verse 34, his mind was like flapping like a fish thrown on dry ground. It trembles all day, struggling. He also found another verse. The mind is restless to control. It is good. A disciplined mind is the road to nirvana. One thing to keep in mind, when he counsels his client, he speaks to them, he offers them suggestion, but he did not use a lot of the Buddhist technical terms. But in this book, he does use it, just so that you guys are aware of it. And basically, he said, by studying Buddhism and practicing meditation, he began to explore the texture of his own suffering, hope that he could rise above his struggles. And he was interested in the teaching of not self. What we took for a self was only a conglomeration of parts, just like a car made up of wheels, axles, motors, chassis, and so forth. And when we look at this, our body, there is not a self, a solid self to be found. The parts that construct our physical body is what the Buddha called the five aggregates that we refer to as a self. And the five aggregates are form, feeling, perception, mental processes, and consciousness. On a side note, remember here's the key: the reason that the Buddha broke this down is just so that we need to understand that our feeling comes and goes, just like our thoughts. We shouldn't attach or identify with our thoughts, our feelings. We our problem, which is in the second noble truth, is that we tend to attach or want more good feelings and reject or suppress bad feelings. And that's our relationship, and that is the cause of our suffering. So basically, he said, the more he meditated, the more he felt connected to himself. This thing that he said, he called self, seemed to be broadening its horizons, and his feelings of being like a fish out of water diminished. And this is when he realized that trauma happens to everyone. 100% of us, um, you know, there's no, we couldn't escape. So he called the explicit trauma, they are loss, death, accidents, disease, abuse, or, natural disaster, right? We went through COVID. We still deal with COVID. I just read, I think last week, that there's a new strain of COVID virus. So if you have underlying health conditions, be cautious, be careful, protect yourself. And then he lists subtle trauma as emotional deprivation of an unloved child. And he also shared his personal story. His father, who was a physician and worked until his father was diagnosed with a tumor at the age of 84. And here's the thing, his father at the age of 15 had to inject morphine to his grandfather, who was dying of mesothelioma, which is a form of lung cancer. So here he listed, the first noble truth, right? That we all are subject to, I mean, no matter what religion you believe, no matter your wealth status, your ethnicity, your culture, we are all subject to birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. Had to deal with people we don't like, separate from our loved ones, and we cannot get what we want. That is These are just the basic, the core of our suffering or our trauma. And that's why the Buddhists, would speak of what was true and beneficial, even if it was disagreeable. And that's the case with therapists today. If a client was not ready to acknowledge his or her trauma, they would, the therapist would not force the issue upon them. The the client or the person has to liberate himself or herself. Even the best teacher, like the Buddha, all we could do is to show them how. So he listed a vignette. Her name is Monica. She was an accomplished professor in her 50s, meaning she had a PhD and she was sober. Her mother was dying, and so that's why she went to see him. And she said, I felt like a person alone in a sailboat in the middle of the ocean, clinging for dear life to the mast. Is too much. I can't hang on any longer. I don't know what else to do. And the way that she presented it, and Dr. Epstein said she was giving language to her trauma. Again, life's difficulties reduced to the feeling that Monica was talking about. And also, this is my observation or my experience. Many in a lot of Asian culture, we say that our human life is like a drop of morning dew. Here today, gone tomorrow, or gone the next moment, meaning that our life, a human life, is very, very fragile. Uh, but we never thought about death. We don't want to talk about it. That's the thing. So basically, he said, our friends and our loved ones struggle. The specter of loss is always hovering. We feel drift, adrift, and more fearful and out of death. But so Epstein told Monica, "Hey, you are the ocean as well." During that session, and that statement had a tremendous impact on her when she came back to see him a few years later, because it made her think. So what he said is that so much of happening, talking in therapy, passes very quick, but some of those statements that when the therapist relate to the clients, uh, a lot of times they have an impact on the client. So the way trauma is the way into the cell, because it affects this human body, these five aggregates. So for us to be free to come to terms with our lives, we have to have a direct experience of ourselves as we really are, what's and all. We have to first find the self that we take to be so real, the one that is pushing us around in life, the one that feels traumatized and tangled in it. Let's say a teenager who was bullied, then the whole thing about this teenager, be it a girl or a boy, feels traumatized, and it could not, and that's the self that this teenager thought, you know. And here he said, freedom, from according to the Buddha, comes from learning how to hold it all differently, juggling them rather than cleaving to their ultimate realities. So back to Monica, and he shared his insight. Basically, she was touched with herself, in touch with herself on a primitive level, and this was a real accomplishment. She did feel alone, adrift, and afraid. Her feelings were conditioned by early childhood experiences of deprivation and were presently unreal. And but Dr. Epstein didn't tell her at the time, and because this was his analysis, but her willingness to expose her true feelings was a great opportunity, and that she was in touch with her reality on one level. At another level, she was poised for a breakthrough. All around her was this liberating ocean of her mind. And that he said that he was going to tell her her conviction about her predicament was inadvertently summoning an image of its release, convinced that she was clinging to the mast of her ship, and she was painting a picture of the sea. And he said, I pointed out the huge part of her internal landscape she was ignoring. So basically, Monica let go, just a little. And then he, Dr. Epstein brought up the Buddha's early life. As you guys all know, the Buddha, when after he was born, his mother died 7 days later, right? And nobody talked about that, especially in the Asian culture. We never discussed that as trauma. But to a child, in a sense, it is trauma. And here, Mark Epstein said, you can see a metaphor churning away, lying in the wait for the psychologically mind times we are now living in. Sometimes the Buddha had no memory of it, a test of suffering so early in his life that it shouldn't matter. And he was raised by his father and his aunt, who was his mom's sister, surrounded by joy and wealth. He still felt that something was wrong, and the presence of this early loss in his psyche creates a motive that anyone who struggles with explicable feelings of estrangement or alienation can relate to. And here's the thing, here's what I put it in red. The traumas of everyday life can easily make us feel like a motherless child, even as we are adults, even as we are in our 60s, 50s, 70s, 80s, or 90s. And this is the key to remember. So, it's not important to find the cause of our traumatized feeling, and it is to learn how to relate to them. The thing is, every day is so challenging, there is a great need to pretend. Our most intimate feelings get shunted to the side, and this is the thing, and because we want to be normal, we ignore our traumatized feeling. Life, can be threatening. We have to deal with it, and none of us really knows how. We are traumatized by life because of its randomness, its lack of regard for our feelings and the losses it brings. Each in our own way, we suffer. When dealing with painful emotion, even Joseph Goldstein said, the way out is through. Emotional pain is as fruitful an object of awareness as anything else. It may even have qualities like intensity that make it particularly useful as a means of training the mind. And the Buddha's life story basically tells us he may not have known where his feelings of trauma came from, but he was able to create for himself the inner environment of attunement and responsiveness that he needed. His success is a model for us. So confronting unpleasant feelings that we often are at a loss to explain, we can learn to use those feelings to show us the oceans of our minds. It's 6:32 now. I think I will stop here and continue next time. I think I'd like to take this time for us to meditate together. Okay? So let's get into your posture, whether you are sitting or standing or lying down or walking. And let's take some deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. Literally blow the air out through your mouth until you feel your belly is empty of air. Let go of your thoughts, thinking, planning, fear, worry. Everything that you encounter since this morning, this past week, past month, try to let it all go. Tell yourself that you are safe, and tell your brain that you are safe. So it does not have to be in hypervigilant mode, seeking safety. Once you are done, then breathe normally through your nose. Allow your body to settle. Feel the contact between your posture against the surface. of your posture. And let's start with a smile. Notice how you feel, how that feeling affects your body, meaning giving rise to the physiological sensations in your body. You notice that your feeling and the sensations are changing, fading away. What do you feel next when you are not smiling? Let's continue with the sense drop practice. First, notice your environment. Feel the space surrounding your body. And use your body to feel the room temperature. If you're outside, notice the temperature with your body. And with your awareness, let's check in with your mind, see how it is. Is it settled, or is it busy with so many thoughts? Is it wandering away? Or is it distracted by your thoughts, your feeling, your emotion, your mood, your attitude? Your sense of hearing, notice noise, sound that you hear, whether you are reacting or letting it be. Your sense of seeing, smell, and taste. During meditation, these three senses are not active when there isn't anything to trigger them. Then your sense of touch in the body, see how the clothes that you wear feel on your body, and any tension, sensation, or physical pain that you are aware of right now. The sense door practice helps you to stay grounded and centered so that you don't get distracted easily or feel overwhelmed when you're being triggered. So let's bring your awareness to your breath. Let's breathe for a couple minutes. When we get angry or anxious or feel sad, it triggers our sympathetic nervous system, and it affects most of our internal organs, causing them out of balance, basically. But if you take the time to just sit still or stand still and breathe for a few minutes, then it triggers this parasympathetic nervous system, and it relaxes your body. It soothes or regulates most of your internal organs and brings about a state of resting, peaceful flow. That's the key. So just sit and breathe. Breathe in, breathe out. Let's continue still anchor your awareness, your mindfulness in the breath. Let's use this time to process the thoughts in your conscious mind. On average, we have some 50,000 thoughts per day. And most of these thoughts are not helpful. Some could even be harmful. So let's use this time to unload and get rid of the thoughts that are useless or harmful. Think of your mindfulness as light shining into your conscious mind. You see a thought comes up, you can quickly know what it is and let it pass. Certainly flush out negative and harmful thoughts. So see if there's any negative self-talk, such as, I hate myself, I don't like myself, I blame myself for everything. These are negative self-talk. If you have that, flush them out. Promise yourself not to repeat them again. Because negative self-talk settles in the default mode network and it takes up a lot of brain cells. So to change your habit, to change your thinking, you want to go to the root, your brain cells. If you have an opinion of someone or people, a negative view, flush it out. It's not your business, it's not your job. So flush it out and remind yourself not to do that again. Anything that people did or said to you that was toxic, let that go. Let go of those individuals as well. Don't let them stay in your conscious mind rent-free. Even if it feels good to hate, just let them go. Let go of all your fears, worries. Try not to think about the future. Fear of the future leads to anxiety. So let that go. Put aside all your planning or images of your loved ones when they appear. Put them aside. See if there's any craving for pleasure through your five senses, right? Let's say ice cream or chocolate, music, smell, beautiful sceneries, touch. These are considered, if you constantly want more of this, these are considered craving. Or if you are clinging to someone or relationship that is not working. Just know that craving and clinging could have a negative effect on your physical and mental health. See if there's any anger or hatred, resentment from years ago that still lingers in the back of your mind, give yourself the power to let it all go. Push it out. And this is how you purify your mind. Just as you would clean your house, your room, your bed, and that you take shower to care for your body. You do the same for your conscious mind. To this mindfulness practice. The more thoughts you let go, the stronger is your power of mindfulness, or the more intense your light of awareness is. You can size through with the thoughts that you have let go. See if you know how these thoughts came about, a pattern of your past thinking with your intention, a pattern of your past behavior, how you treated yourself and others with your intention. That is your insight, meaning you have a deeper understanding of your conscious mind. And based on your insight with your mindfulness, you want to continue to do what's best for you, then in a sense you are becoming your own therapist. But be open, be honest, and be objective so that you can make proper decisions in each moment for yourself, for your future. Let's now turn your attention to your feeling. Just notice how you feel. Whether you feel pleasant or unpleasant. If you feel good or bad because of your five senses or that comes from your mind, these are considered the mundane, pleasant or unpleasant feeling. Because these feelings come from your senses. And know that your feeling comes and goes. It does not stay. If certain feeling that you don't feel comfortable, see if you could sit with it. See how that affects your body. If it's too much, then you can stop. But if you're able to tolerate, and that's the term that Dr. Mark Epstein uses, tolerable, then perhaps you have a better understanding of that feeling of yourself. And that's mindfulness. And when you meditate for some time, and when you feel calm and peaceful naturally from within, that is the super mundane, pleasant feeling that you experienced. It is super mundane because it does not come from your five senses. It may last a bit longer, but it will also fade away. And that's the nature of all feelings. And you may notice that your feelings in the past perhaps were dictated by other people because of your reaction to what they said or did to you. But with mindfulness of feeling, you're able to be aware of the feeling that comes up, sit with it, and allow it to go. Let's sit in silence for a couple minutes. You can continue to pay attention to your feeling or stay with it or focusing on the breath. Let's check in with your mind, see how it is, perhaps settle, clear. Spaces, your feeling, your emotion, your mood, your attitude. Notice the qualities of mindfulness or awareness, concentration, patience that you just cultivated. With that, I'll hand it over to Danny. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Venerable De. So when we started, we talked about how having to find the balance now between how we would use Buddha's teaching to address everyday suffering or anxiety, more specifically anxiety and depression and hate and all the what we would call unwholesome feeling. And then at the same time, not make it just a therapy, but more into the study of the historical Buddha. Uh, as you were giving your presentation today, I noticed that you mentioned the word confrontation and confronting, not confrontation, confronting. I meant to say confronting. And so I thought that, we talk about the two things. We talk about finding the balance between the two as if they're two very distinct way of practicing, where in fact they are really the same, because Buddha's teaching is really about confronting as opposed to escaping, right? It's really, so when we talk of the Four Noble Truths, the very first truth is about suffering. That is actually confronting your suffering, understanding where it came from. And so the whole concept of trauma, and not necessarily just um, personal trauma, but could also be generational trauma. It could be environmental trauma. It could be, it's very broad, but it starts to explain some of the discomfort or suffering that we have. So I thought that was really good. So I wanted to just before we finish, I do want to take this opportunity to talk about this new meditation session that we have on Sunday, an in-person class, and I think it is our attempt to actually using different technique, bringing in different people with different background to for each one of us to have a chance to confront our past and
Mm-hmm.
confront the reasons behind our our discomfort or unhappiness. So perhaps I show that. Let me just show that, and then we can go through that. Now, a week before, Venerable Buddha actually came to Oakland and started this session. So this is a in-person, a physical class, because everything that I do, many of the things that we do are online. So this is in-person meditation, and it's in Oakland, California, across the bay from San Francisco. It's at the edge of Chinatown. And hang on just 1 second. Okay, it's not showing right. Is it showing?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
It is
but
showing, right?
but it's kind of big, so so we can't read the whole screen.
Okay,
Oh
but
yeah,
can
right
you?
here. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Okay, now.
so okay, it is showing. Okay, good. All right. So now, first of all, let's talk about the instructors on a daily basis. The instructors are Mr. Tin Yun and myself. And as some of you might have heard from Venerable De Hong before, that Tin was a student of his when Tin was incarcerated in the state prison. He's been out for a couple of years now. He's actually a registered yoga teacher and also who also works in the community. And so the idea is to combine the yoga teaching, the yoga training that teen teachers, and also the meditation, particularly the meditation in motion that we do. So the combination of that, blending movement and breath work, and then also meditation, it is so that we can support both inner awareness and also to improve our everyday well-being. And so each sessions will include your uh, your conventional, typical yoga movement, what's called asana, which is one of the branches of the yoga teaching. The second also combines breath work, pranayama, to because I remember when you talk a great deal about a book called The Body Remembers, right? Your mic is off.
Oh, probably I don't remember.
No, what was the name of the book? The
The
Body
body keeps a
Remembers?
score. The body
Oh, the
keeps a
body
score.
keeps a score. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm sorry.
there's actually a very important interplay between the body and the mind. Um, if you suffer trauma physically,
Mm-hmm.
it it reflects in your in your emotional health, and
Yeah,
then if you suffer trauma emotionally, it actually comes back into
your
physical
body.
illness. So yeah, your
Right.
body. There's a very important interplay between them. So the idea here is that we're trying to work on both the body and the mind. And so anyway, we'll also do loving kindness, compassion, and meditation. Anyway, for those of you who live in the area and are interested, you can contact me. And I'll give you more detail. And for those of you who are interested but are not in a neighborhood, I'm doing my best to also put that on YouTube. Turns out that because we don't have an internet connection,
Mm-hmm.
the best I can do is do a YouTube live. So we'll see how that works. Now the time that I did was when we did that audio didn't come out right, but it will improve. I promise.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully, Venerable D will come back in July sometime, and
Yeah, we'll see how
to
it goes.
you see how it goes. Yeah, you see how it goes. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna turn off the outside.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.